I think for the interest of time, let's start. Hi and welcome to the introduction to safeguarding webinar. I'm Sosina Lemma and I'm chairing the webinar today. I'm the Regional Associate for Resource and Support Hub, or RSH. Before we start the webinar, a few points on housekeeping. First, please note that you are all on mute with your video turned off. This is to support with the quality and connection of the webinar. Second, if you have any issues with tech or otherwise, you can write to us and in the chat function, so we will help you. Please be aware that we are recording this webinar to share on the online hub afterward for anyone who is not able to join, but your name will not be visible or visible. Today's webinar aims to provide an overview of safeguarding, including the sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. It sets out to introduce civil society organizations to the safeguarding journey by providing an introduction and general overview of safeguarding, how to assess and plan for safeguarding, what is needed, and what to do if problem arises. In order to do this, I have invited Caroline Kibos, who will talk us through the key part of this webinar. Caroline Kibos is a lawyer with a passion of human rights, peace building, governance, the transitional justice, and security sector reform. She supported local level peace initiative in South Sudan and refugee camps in Uganda and Ethiopia. She also actively supported civil society during the high-level revitalization forum in Addis Ababa, and continues to participate in different policy fora that plays great role to shape the public policies. Caroline currently works as a national associate for South Sudan for the Resource and Support Hub. Thank you so much. Caroline, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sosina. Good morning, everyone. I thank you for joining us for this webinar. My name is Caroline Kibos, as introduced earlier on by Sosina, and I am the National Associate for the South Sudan Resource Hub. So today is going to be our first webinar, and it's going to focus mainly on the introduction to safeguarding. So we'll have a bit of introduction of what safeguarding is, so that for the next upcoming webinars, we'll now look more into the details about safeguarding. So before we get to know about the safeguarding, I want to just give you a brief background of the RSH. RSH stands for Resource and Support Hub. So the Safeguarding Resource and Support Hub aims to support organizations in the aid sector to strengthen their safeguarding policy and practice against SEA. So SEA is sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. So our hub aims to support organizations that work in the aid sector to strengthen their safeguarding policies and practice. You can visit us at our global hub. We have a global hub, and we have hubs in different countries. We have one in South Sudan here, and then we have in Ethiopia and in Nigeria. So you can visit us in safeguarding hub, supporthub.org. That's for our global hub, and then for South Sudan, it's southsudansupporthub.org. In there, you will find tools and resources and news about the safeguarding. So, yeah, our work is we identify major gaps, and we also try to find ways of filling them in. But of course, we don't do that on our own. We collaborate with partners like you and also other networks. So our approaches can be through development of resources and mentorship of those who require mentorship. We also have some online trainings, webinars such as this, and podcasts. So we are going to now go to safeguarding, and then we'll know what we are going to cover today. We are going to mainly cover 4 areas. First, we'll look at the definition of safeguarding and what is needed for safeguarding, how to assess and plan safeguarding, and finally, we'll look at what to do if there is a problem. So going to what is safeguarding, the definition of safeguarding. So as a hub, we define safeguarding as an ethical approach and set of practical measures adopted by organizations to promote the safety and well-being of everyone involved in the delivery or receipt of humanitarian aid and development assistance, and to protect them as far as possible from all forms of harm, including exploitation, abuse, and harassment that may result from their involvement in or in contact with the organization. So I know this is a very long definition, but if we were to just cut it short and simplify, what we mean by safeguarding is that it's the principle of us do no harm to those that we come into contact with. So if we are to summarize all these things, we will simply be saying that safeguarding is doing no harm to those we come into contact with, any kind of harm. Yes, next. So we'll have a background with safeguarding. So what safeguarding mainly does is it tries to address the misuse of power. What do I mean by misuse of power? I know that in an organization, in all our different organizations, we have these people who are more powerful than the rest. Not powerful in terms of strength, the physical strength, but because of their role in the organization, or because of their race or their gender or their nationality or education, you find that they are given more power than the rest of than others. So you'll find that the people who are less powerful are at a greater risk of exploitation and abuse by those ones who are in power. So for example, sexual exploitation, abuse, and sexual harassment involves people within organizations that use their power in harmful ways. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you find people using their power against people who are less powerful. So sometimes you find these ones, for example, managers in organizations, they try to enforce certain things thinking that it's not harmful, but it might actually be harmful towards the people who are less powerful. So powerful people can also perpetrate physical, sometimes it gets physical, or sometimes it gets emotional towards the less powerful people. So all these forms of violence can be referred to as safeguarding violations. And we need to also know that sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment mostly impacts women and girls. But we should not forget that it also affects men and boys, only that the degree is higher in women and girls as compared to the men and boys. Next. So there are certain global sector standards that we look up to in this safeguarding journey. These standards have been set so that they guide organizations and they guide us people in our safeguarding journey. So whatever we do, the policies that we develop in safeguarding have to, at least in a certain way, have to adhere to these global standards. First, we have the DAC recommendation on ending sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment in development, cooperation, and humanitarian assistance. Then we have the Interagency Standing Committee Minimum Operating Standards for Protection from Sexual Exploitation and Abuse by Own Personnel. We have the Core Humanitarian Standards on Quality and Accountability and Keeping Children Safe Standards, plus the International Labour Organization Convention on Violence and Harassment in the Workplace. So to just make it, to elaborate more on this, these are not the only standards, these are just some of the standards that are adhered to while on the safeguarding journey. And these standards also, if you can see, there is Keeping Children Safe standards, because we know that safeguarding is not only for adults, but it's also children. There are sometimes children come into contact with certain adults and then they are abused. That's why you see that we have also safeguarding standards for children. Next. So number 2 is, how do we assess safeguarding? So for organizations, we need to have tools to identify with international safeguarding standards so that you see whether you're matching or you adhere to the international standards, whether you meet those standards that are required from, for example, the Children's Safety and which ones you do not meet. This helps organizations so that you have a plan. For example, if you have an assessment to see whether you've met, if you've not met, then you will devise a plan of how you're going to help the organization and help the personnel to meet these standards. And then it will also help you in monitoring regularly and to measure your progress on this organic journey, and also to update your plan. So because if you keep on monitoring yourself, you know where you've done well and where you've done wrong, and how you can improve on what you've done wrong, so that you can be able to update your plans according to your self-assessment. So it's very important that organizations are able to assess themselves so that they know where they are and they update their plans accordingly. So we have examples of tools that you can use, the self-assessment tools. You can use the Core Humanitarian Standard Alliance and the Keeping Children Self-Audit tool. In this tool, there are certain questions that you will be able to go through, and you will assess yourself to see where you are at that particular time. Think how to plan safeguarding. That's what. So for anything that you're going to do, of course, you need to have a plan on what you should do. So how will organizations plan safeguarding? So organizations benefit from an organization-wide safeguarding plan to continuously improve and maintain safeguarding measures. Some organizations plan to meet international standards, and some of them will plan according to the certain specific risks in different departments, teams, or locations. So each one knows their organizations best, and you know what risks the different departments within the organizations face. So for example, as much as there are international standards that guide safeguarding, you can also be able to plan your safeguarding according to those risks that are best known to your organization, so that you have something tailored according to your needs instead of just going wide. So it's also, if you know that, then it will help you to clearly budget for your plan. So if you have your self-tailored plan, if you have your self-tailored plan, it will help you budget for how you're going to implement those plans. And it's very good that you have to put those budgets and all these plans so that it helps you throughout your safeguarding journey. Next. What is needed for safeguarding? So we've looked at what safeguarding is, we've looked at self-assessment. So now we have to look at what we need for safeguarding. First and foremost, we need organizational standards. What do the organizational standards that are needed? We need a holistic organizational standard within human resource, within the programs, within partnerships with other organizations, and also on culture and leadership of the organizations. So you'll find that if you have these organization standards, you will be able to show donors that actually you as an organization, you're actively managing safeguarding. And these days, donors are so keen into looking at organizations that have safeguarding and actually implement their safeguarding policies. So the organizational standards should be able to align with international standards that have been set by the aid and development sector. So that's it helps you actually as an organization, not only in securing funds from donors, but it also helps you in your safeguarding journey so that you're able to self-assess and you're able to also serve the community and to have your employees at a better place. Next. The next thing is organizational culture and leadership. So we need the culture and leadership to be able to model expected behavior and make sure that procedures are followed and integrated consistently. So if you have a culture and you have good leadership, this will help the organization to know what behavior is expected of the rest of the employees, what behavior the organization expects out of them, and to also make sure that these people know that there are procedures that should be integrated into the organization and should be followed consistently. That is what the organization and culture and leadership does. Next is the safeguarding policies, procedures, and code of conduct. First, the policies. In the policies is where the organization will state its commitments. That is what appears in the policy. Then the procedures will give details on how the organization intends to enact these commitments. Then the code of conduct is going to outline the expected behavior. So you see, it's a systematic thing. First, you'll have policies, so organization's policies. Then you will have how the organization is planning to enact the policies. And then you will have the code of conduct whereby the expected behaviors are outlined for everyone to follow. The third thing you will have is the communication, learning, and development. In this, organization makes sure that the staff and partners understand their obligation. They know how to report, be it staff or a partner or the community, know how to report any case of exploitation or sexual harassment. And then you'll also set in place a variety methods of communication to be able to update people regularly of whatever is happening. And then you should also have training for the staff and specific training for those who are charged with safeguarding responsibilities. So we know in organizations, we have those people who are charged with the safeguarding responsibilities. So these people they need to have continuous specific training tailored especially for them to be able to handle the day-to-day challenges that the organization goes through with regards to safeguarding. Next. The fourth thing we should do is to integrate safeguarding into the relevant units of the organization. So we know that an organization is made up of different units. We have the human resources, we have the programming, and then we have the media and communication. So we need to ensure that safeguarding is integrated into all these units. So in human resource, you have to make sure that you have safe recruitment. If you're recruiting staff or you're managing volunteers. So just something to do with the whole employment cycle, you have to ensure that safeguarding is integrated in that part so that when people are being recruited, they don't feel that they are being sexually exploited in order to be given jobs or in order to be taken in as interns and all these things. In safe programming, you have to have safeguarding principles to inform the whole program cycle so that you know what the program ought to do or not to do. With regards to data and communication, you need to have a clear guidance on use of social media and seeking consent and permission whenever you want to publish something, because it's sometimes certain things do not need to be published, or someone does not feel that does not want you to publish any information that they have given you. So you have to seek consent from whoever is giving you information. Then fifthly, we have to have a functional risk management. Functional risk management in terms of how we identify the risks and how we mitigate them. So that is also part of safeguarding, because in anything you do, you know that there are risks. So you should be able to know how to identify those risks and how to also mitigate them. Next. What do we do if there is a problem? So what if in your organization a case happens, a safeguarding case happens, or someone has been sexually exploited or abused or harassed? What should you do? So normally there should be a whistleblowing system, which is sometimes you say it's a speak up system, or others prefer to call it a whistleblowing system. So what is that system? That is a system that helps staff to report concerns about safeguarding. So if you hear that someone has been sexually exploited within the organization or someone has been harassed, there should be a system put in place, a mechanism put in place that helps you to go and report without you feeling that you're going to be at a disadvantaged position, or without you feeling that the survivor's identity or the survivor's needs are going to be overlooked. So this system should be open to everyone. Everyone should feel like they can they can trust that system, they have confidence in that system, and it should be accessible to everyone, and that it should be able to work for everyone. And that system should actually prioritize survivors' rights, needs, and wishes. By prioritizing survivors' rights, needs, and wishes, I mean that if someone goes and reports and says, for example, Caroline has been harassed and blah, blah, the person who is being reported to should also not just jeopardize because sometimes it's stigmatizing if some people know that I have been harassed. You know, the society we are living in, we fear the stigma of harassment or sexual abuse. So this system should be able to understand the context in which we are living in, and instead of just taking that straight up and making a public announcement out of it, they should be able to protect my needs and my rights at that time, and also look at what I wish. So we have different wishes. Sometimes maybe you want to do certain things differently. So I should be approached so that these people will know what my wish is. That system should be able to know what my wish is before they can go any further. All staff and associates must be confident in that system, and they must support and protect them whenever they report a concern. So it has to have an element of confidentiality. The person who reports must not be disclosed, otherwise you're also jeopardizing them. And next time, people will be discouraged from reporting. So the system should be able to offer protection from complaints that try to cause harm to other staff. So also this system must not straight away believe whenever that there is a report, they must straight away not believe that, yes, this report is right. They should also sit down and also help protect the image of that person, of the other person who was reported, because something might actually be wrong. Not everything that is reported will be right. So for these systems, the most effective system we find out is that these are systems that are developed together with the staff, because if you sit down and you consult the staff, the system will be effective, because they will recognize and they will be able to tell you how they want certain things to be addressed. So these systems should be developed together with staff to help recognize and address any barriers to reporting that a survivor may experience because of their gender. So if you consult well enough with the staff, they'll be able to tell you what barriers are there and how they should be addressed, so that the system works well and flows. Next. So we have community-based reporting mechanisms, because earlier on we said that safeguarding is not only between people in an organization, it also concerns people within an organization and the communities outside the organization. So these community-based reporting mechanisms are these mechanisms that help people to report, even if you're not part of the organization, but you have been exploited. It will help you as a community member to also report. So this community-based reporting mechanisms is a way that people who work with those, in partnership with the organization, or the other people that the organization works with, have a way to report safeguarding exploitation or abuse and consent. And also the same way that the whistleblowing system protects the rights of the survivor, these community-based reporting mechanisms must also provide the same, prioritize the same rights and needs and wishes of the survivors. Next. So we also have case management. So after the case is reported, what should be done? So when the reports are received, they should be handled in line with organizational procedures. So we'll find that there are different organizations, maybe with different procedures, but the procedures don't really vary so much because these are administrative things. So you'll find that there are certain approaches that organizations take to manage cases. So you find that there's survivor-centered case management process, which involves referral to quality services. And still, even under these referrals, the survivor's rights and needs should be prioritized. So even if you're going to refer a case, you must first of all see if your referral your referral of that case is going to do justice, or is it going to do harm, or is it going to further exploit the survivor? So sometimes you find that referrals can be made. You might find that the case is criminal and then you're referring it to national authorities like the police or for criminal prosecutions. So when you refer that case to the police, then they will have to have and do their own investigations to come up with their own evidence and see how they can take further the case. And sometimes certain cases just need administrative investigations within the organizations. And when doing those investigations, then you also have to have someone who is well-trained at investigating so that you do not have a mix-up of things. But very importantly is you have to know that safety and protection of everyone involved in this issue must be prioritized. Next. So finally, there are very basic key things that we have to remember about our safeguarding journey. First is that safeguarding is about keeping people safe from harm. And in case that harm happens, then how we address that harm. It's also about knowing that sexual exploitation can happen to anyone in the organization at any time, in any organization. So it's not specific to only certain people or to certain organizations, but at any given time, anywhere, in any organization, sexual exploitation, abuse, or harassment can happen. And then there is this myth that maybe it is only between the opposite sex. We've seen also there are certain cases that same-sex sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment can still happen. Then we also need to know that organizations should understand where the power lies in the organization, and the leaders need to create a culture of respect and accountability. Meaning that however powerful you are in the organization, you need to have some level of accountability to the organization and to the people of the organization. You do not also just do anything or in the way you wish, because you're within an organization setup. So there must be some certain degree of respect and accountability to everyone. Then organizations also need to have regular assessments of themselves against safeguarding standards so that they also assess the risks, and they should also monitor their safeguarding plans. And if they do not have, they need to create and regularly monitor safeguarding plans. Then for organizations to address incidents, they need to have accessible systems that are accessible to all staff, people in the communities, so that these people can be able to report incidents of safeguarding. And then each and every organization must have clear management procedures and investigations so that it helps move forward the incidents on safeguarding. Next. Next. Yes, so for more on safeguarding, on introduction to safeguarding, you can go to our global hub online. The links are, you can see the links on the screen. The global hub is safeguardingsupporthub.org. The South Sudan hub is southsudan.safeguardingsupporthub.org. Or you can actually sign up to our newsletters at southsudan.safeguardingsupporthub.org/South Sudan/newsletter. Or you can follow us on our social media, Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Thank you. I'll take up questions and answers.
Yeah, thank you so much, Caroline. There are 4 questions. Unfortunately, some of you are struggling with sound. It's okay from our side, but it's already recorded and we will post it on our website, so you can find it there. And you also ask about the PowerPoint presentation. Everything will be uploaded after this training. When we upload it, you will be communicated also. So now it's open, the Q&A session is open. You already put 4 questions. So we will start by responding to that. Caroline, did you get them or shall I read them?
I have the first question is from Dengaran. Is it? Signing a consent form is not a common practice in South Sudan as long as there is a verbal consent. Is there any safeguarding concern for publishing a success story with pictures of beneficiaries without a written consent? Yes, there is a great concern. Normally, it's not good to publish pictures of beneficiaries, we call them survivors. It's not good because you might actually be intensifying the case, or you might actually be exposing the survivors to more harm. So I wouldn't advise that anyone publishes pictures of survivors without their consent. So you must always seek consent before you do anything. So someone is giving a live example saying we had a whistleblowing issue with an implementing partner, which happens to be a government institution. A person at the partner location blew the whistle, and we took it directly and followed the documented pathways. But the government ministry responsible for that department, with which we had a direct financial grant agreement, said we should have routed the whistleblowing communication through the ministry. How do we handle cases where the ministry and donor admin procedures and conflicting? Normally, these procedures do not normally conflict. The only point maybe of conflict is where you have something coming through that the ministry has an interest in. So it will be a conflict of interest. But what you should do is you should actually use your own organization procedures to follow up with these cases. And if it's a criminal case, then it goes straight to the national authorities and they will be able to take it from there. And if it's within the organization, then you'll have to use your own administrative procedures.
Caroline, the other question is, who is supposed to conduct the self-assessment and how often is supposed to be conducted? If you have any issue or concern, identify the assessment. Who should this reported to? And I will read the other question. In the meantime, I will post the self-assessment tool, which is designed by RSH in the chat, so you can answer this question. Thank you.
I'm so sorry, I'm not seeing the question about self-assessment.
No, I'm reading it for you. Who is supposed to conduct the self-assessment and how often is supposed to conduct? If there is any issue concern identified in the assessment, who should this reported to?
Yeah, because these are self-assessments, so it's supposed to be the organization themselves doing the self-assessment. And you also, I think you, as an organization, you can be able to tell how long do you need before you do a self-assessment. So sometimes it can be quarterly, or it can be every 2 times in a year. So it depends on your resources, and also it depends on how you plan to do your organization plans.
Okay, the next question is, can you share any practical example of community-based reporting mechanism in South Sudan?
Yes, first of all, you need to understand what community-based reporting mechanism is. It's a system whereby any person from the community that feels that there is a safeguarding issue can be able to report that issue for example, to the organization. So sometimes you'll have an organization setting up, assigning someone with the responsibility of safeguarding. So someone from the community can come and report to the person. Normally it happened in one of the areas that there was a safeguarding issue concerning a child. So the aunt, because the mother of the child was scared or she did not want the child to have to be stigmatized. So she was scared to actually approach the perpetrator of the violence. So the aunt of the child came up, and when she saw someone from the organization, so she asked to see the human resource of the organization, who also, she actually didn't know, but she only asked to see someone who is in charge of the organization employees. And she reported her case, and then the human resource decided to do some interrogations, and then the case was taken up to the police. So that's an example that I can give.
Okay. There is also one question. What is the key message for safeguarding or slogan? What is the key message for safeguarding?
The key message is, what safeguarding is about is that we do not do harm to any person we come into contact with. So it's just the principle of do no harm, whether it is physical harm or emotional harm. Just do not do any harm to any person who comes into contact with you.
Okay, if there is an incident, example in the family, like a rape case or incidents, and the issue is protecting the family image and dignity arise, how do you ensure the incident is addressed without damaging family images?
Well, some of the incidents, it depends on what people take as damaging family reputation, but some of the incidents are criminal and they have to be approached from the criminal point of view. So you'll have to actually involve the authorities, because the case in South Sudan is sometimes families prefer to use customary dispute resolution methods, which are also not, they do not actually favor the survivor. Because if you're raped in our cultures, if you're raped, then the person who raped you will be forced to pay dowry or to pay anything, or you'll be forced to marry that person. And that is really not, it's at a disadvantage of the survivor. So it's best that some of these things should be handled by the national authorities, the police, or it can actually reach up to the court, and then they will know what to do with the cases. Because sometimes by settling it at family level and condoning such acts means that we are encouraging others to continue doing the same harm to other people as well.
Okay. There are other questions also. Is it okay for survivors to write a letter of appreciation after healing from any harm? Is one of the question. And the other is, hi Caroline, do you provide support for direct follow-up or referred cases? Or do you have any list of service outlets that we can link up with the referred case reported if we don't have capacity to manage those cases directly?
Well, let me start with the second question, asking for support. They're asking for support to, well, the hub, we don't give financial support, but we can give technical support on what can be done and on building the capacity of our partners or the people we work with. But for the financial support, we cannot give, we do not have that capacity to give financial support, but we can give technical support and we can work with you throughout that journey. And the first question is asking about writing whether the survivor can write a letter of appreciation. So that one depends on the survivor, but I don't think it's necessary to write a letter of appreciation. Just people have different hearts or different feelings. Some people think they should appreciate others more and some don't, but it's not a requirement that the survivor should write a letter of appreciation.
Okay, what can be done to protect social workers against perpetrators? And other is, as a volunteer organization working with communities in the rural area or hard to reach, we do hear an unconfirmed report of the incident, and when trying to assist person, member of the family refuse to cooperate. what do we do in this case?
So if I'm to get the question right, is they're asking on what can be done to protect social workers from safeguarding issues. So basically people have to take personal measures, and then the organizations also have to make sure that they make safeguarding aware, they make their staff aware about safeguarding, so that their staff do not violate or do not go and perpetrate sexual harassment and exploitation on other people. And then also we have to educate the communities on how to work with, to be able to work with other people from organizations, so that the exploitation does not happen both ways, because sometimes you find there are powerful people from the communities who may try to exploit these social workers. So it's both ways. We need to build capacity, both among the social workers, so that they know their obligations, and also so that the communities also know their obligations and how they can be able to work together.
Okay, what option does the researcher take if in case a school child is abused and the school has given permission for interview of the learner? Meanwhile, the parents decline, is one of the questions.
Well, basically, if the child is below 18, it's the parents who are responsible for them. So if the consent has not been given by the parent, then the interview should not continue, because legally the child is still a minor, and it's the parent who is responsible for them. So until the parent and the school can clarify on that conflict, the interview should not happen.
Okay, there are also other questions in terms of our service as RSH. What support in terms of policy development do you offer to organizations unqualified to develop their own policy? And the other is to get your contacts for more technical support. And one of the questions not related with RSH is what happened perpetrator who works in legal services?
What happened to perpetrators who does what?
Work in legal services.
Okay. So I'll answer the first. The first one is asking for what support we can give in terms of policy development. So we can actually give the technical support to develop your own policies, because we think that each organization should have their own policy based on their context and based on the risks that they face, because they know the organization better than anyone. And you will get my contact. It's my email is caroline@rshub.org.uk. So you can drop me an email, and then I'll see how to help you. And for perpetrators who work in the legal departments, normally, legally, if you find that where you're going to report a case, there's going to be injustice or justice is not going to be served, you're allowed to transfer and seek the help of another person, because it's not only one legal department, but you can transfer your case from that department to another one where you think that your case cannot be interfered with. Yeah.
Okay, in terms of policy development, what type of support you are giving? It's already answered for Peter, but just for all of you, it's good to visit our website also, because we have a lot of support for especially less resources civil society organizations. And we have like Ask an Expert service and also online trainings. You can find also a number of tools and resources, but Caroline will be reached for South Sudan, and we will reach you also with all information, additional information. I think we cover all of the questions. Okay, there is one which I skipped. Do we have harmonized formats for the self-assessment tool? It's already shared about what's suggested by RSH, but there can be a number of self-assessment tools. I don't know if I miss anything.
Yeah, there are different self-assessment tools depending on what works best for you. So you will adapt to what works best for you. So it's not only one format.
Yeah. Okay, there is one question coming, taking about protection concern committed by community member and not by NGO staff. What is to be done if the survivor refuses to report the case? Should this be entered in the safeguarding log? If it's not, basically, if it's community-based.
Yes, if it's a community member who has perpetrated the incident, the issue, and the survivor who, so does the survivor happen to be an NGO, or it's just between the community members? Either way, if the survivor does not want to report the case, you also have to understand from their point of view, because you cannot report you can report for them, but at some point you also still need them in the case, because you cannot purport to seek justice for someone who does not also want to be available in their own case. So maybe you'll have to understand, sometimes the survivors do not want to report the cases because they are threatened or because they are scared. So you can give them some time, or you can actually talk to them through this journey of safeguarding and assure them how their rights and their interests are going to be protected and see. But basically, all survivors I know would want to report cases, and if they don't report it, then because at some point they will need evidence, and if you don't get their consent, they can actually hide all the evidence from you. So it still has to start with the survivor. You'll have to find why the survivor is not reporting the case, so that before you can take any other action.
Thank you. Do you include the church and faith-based organization as well in disseminating safeguarding key messages?
Yes, you should include the church and faith-based institutions. This safeguarding is for everyone. If there is no guru in safeguarding, or there is no main sector that is supposed to only know safeguarding, it's for everyone. So you should include the church and faith-based institutions.
Okay, thank you. I think we cover all of the questions. If you have any question, please let me know. Let me know. We have very few minutes. Otherwise, we start to conclude. Okay, thank you so much for your questions. If we need anything, we will come back to you with the summary of answers. And there is an evaluation. This evaluation or poll will help us to improve the future webinars. There are 2 questions. So please, yeah. So please try to answer these two questions. It will help us to improve our service in the future also. So I will give you a minute to fill these questions. Okay, thank you so much. That's all we have for today. Thanks again for Caroline for her informative presentation, and also for all of you for engaging and challenging questions. Before we close our webinar, I want to draw your attention to the feedback poll if you are not filling it. Otherwise, thank you for your responses. We will share this webinar records and slides shortly. By next week, where you will get it uploaded in our website. If you want to hear about the future RSH webinars, please subscribe our newsletter also. The link is in the chat. Thank you, and I hope to connect with you again.